So I just want to start straight away into the questions and India-UAE relationship and the way forward, of course. But before that, continuing on with what we were just talking about just before this interview started, the soft power. When you talked about India's soft power, but UAE soft power, what do you think that is? Because there is a huge people-to-people connect between the two countries for a long, long time, and now the governments have also realized that there is so much possibilities there. Where do you think that's going, and what do you think UAE can also add on to?
Look, this is an area I'm personally very passionate about because growing up and traveling was privileged to be able to travel. My parents would take us to Europe, to the US, to the east of the UAE, that is. I would notice that it would be difficult to find products and services that are branded products and services from our part of the world that came out of, say, Arab countries. And I'm not talking about generic products like hummus. I'm talking about branded products. And I was always curious, why is that the case? We're a region of close to 500 million people now, or maybe surpass that. Why isn't it that we can't export those sorts of product services? The same with music, the same with film. And is it because we haven't got the creative talent? Of course we do. Is it that we don't have the ambitions to do that? Maybe. Is it that we don't have the correct partnerships? Potentially. But the result is that we didn't. And I think it's extremely important. If you take the US as an example, whether or not you agree or disagree with the US politics or foreign policy, everyone around the world is exposed to brand USA at some point of time in the day or in the week, whether it's again through food, through music, through film, through technology, through devices, through search engines, through and this is incredibly powerful because what that does is it creates strong affinity between the youth of those countries and the country that's exporting those products and services. So why aren't we doing that better? This is something I've been thinking about, and also if you just take one example from the UAE, which has worked very well, is take a company like Emirates Airlines. Now, despite the fact that Emirates is, it's a luxury travel, a very small percentage of the world has actually traveled on a plane, right? That's just a fact. So it's a luxury experience. So it's a luxury service, if you will. But even within that, people who know about Emirates, who haven't necessarily traveled on Emirates, think about what when you think about that brand? You think about reliability. You think about service. You think about hospitality. You think about all the things that are actually embedded in the value systems of the UAE. And they're experiencing those through in this case, a service, but it's a brand. I can come up with other examples from the UAE, but if we were to expand that across to instead of just one or two or three, but 50, 60, 100, 200 brands, think about how much reach one would have in creating those affinities internationally. India also has, we were just talking about Korea and how it's a common phenomenon between not just India and the UAE, but many other parts of the world that K-pop has penetrated, that Korean skincare regimes and brands have also become massive. How TV and TV shows again, and these are, and this is in language that most Indians don't speak, and certainly most Emiratis don't speak, which is in Korean. Yet it's penetrated these markets, and it's created a huge amount of soft power for Korea. Well, what can the UAE learn from that? What can India learn from that? I think we can both learn a lot from that. And I'm hoping that what we can do is work together to figure out how we can each become a platform for each other's products and services to launch to other parts of the world. As you know, the UAE, and one of the reasons that I'm here talking to Indian business community is to identify the UAE not just as an opportunity in and of itself, but also as a gateway to the rest of the region, as a gateway to Africa, which again is a huge opportunity that we can tackle together and that we can embrace together. So I think the relationship with the UAE has gone from strength to strength. We're beyond asking, can we partner? We know that we can. We're now more focused on the implementation phase of our relationship, looking at specific sectors where we can go deeper. By bilateral trade, as you know, already surpassed $100 billion 5 years before the original target. We've now, through the visit of our President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and Prime Minister Modi, through both shakes and hugs, decided to double the ambition to reach 200 billion by 2032. We are certainly in the UAE optimistic that we can reach that target well before 2032. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that we really have strong connective tissue between our business communities, not just our sovereign companies. In the UAE, we've had already a lot of activation of sovereign companies, sovereign funds, quasi-government companies, which is great. But we need to now unlock and really unleash, if you will, the capabilities and capacities of our private sector, of our corporates, to understand India as an opportunity, and vice versa for India, an Indian business community to understand the UAE as an opportunity and as a gateway.
Okay, so I want to talk a bit more about that because, if you see historically, India and UAE have always had a good relationship, but then it was just going along. It was like just another one of those relationships. Like, historically, of course, that the Indian rupee was the currency at one point of time. Then, of course, UAE went on a different, shot up like anything. All that happened. But in the last, 10, 15 years, the relationship has changed from just being a kind of a, if I can put it crudely, a human resource source. More than that, the kind of trade, business, and of course, diplomatically also, the countries have come closer together. But business-wise, from earlier, for a huge number of Indians going for employment in UAE and other countries in the Middle East, beyond that, how has like for example, the FTA, the trade agreement, how does that change things, and how has it changed things in the last, I think, 2 years now? We are reaching 2 years, I guess.
Since actually 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
We signed the FTA, the CEPA.
Okay.
The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement in 2022. It was actually
22.
the UAE's
yeah.
first, which was the first one that we worked on and established. And I think the fruits of that are evident. We've already, as I said, blown past the $100 billion target, which was set for 2030. And we hit that last year. And that I don't think would have happened if we didn't sign that. But we need to look now, again, these agreements are living and breathing agreements. They're not static, they're dynamic. The agreements themselves must adapt to the needs and the opportunities that present themselves. Today, the opportunities have expanded beyond what we envisaged even in 2022. So we need to make sure the agreements are working for those opportunities. And that's why we have regular check-ins between the CEPA team to come together and to really understand, is the CEPA working for us? Where do we need to make sure that it's tweaked, it's enhanced, to make sure that we're embracing these new opportunities? Look, trade is important. And trade is, to use an analogy, trade is like the engine of the partnership. But the people is the fuel.
Right.
So it's the people-to-people ties that fundamentally will make this relationship grow stronger and to become even more strategic in nature as we grow together. And we're seeing that. In the UAE, it's not difficult to understand why India means so much. The UAE population today is made up almost 50% of Indian nationals who are living and working within the UAE. Traditionally, people would often assume that the vast majority of that was blue-collar workers. Well, actually, that isn't the case today.
That's evolved over the last 20 years.
Over the past 20, 30 years, whereas today you have, I think, close to 40% of the Indian population, working population in the UAE, as white-collar professional services. You have many CEOs of some of our largest companies as Indian nationals. And really, the professional services community in the UAE is made up of many brilliant Indians. So we have a lot of history, and that creates, I think, a backbone of trust, of a sense of community, which is so important. And that is a foundation of everything that you build on. So it's great that we have that foundation, but we mustn't take it for granted, because going forward, there's a new generation of Indians, there's a new generation of Emiratis, that maybe, if we're not careful, might take that for granted. So we need to make sure that the people-to-people connection is always nurtured, and that means not just hard infrastructure and investments in business-to-business activities across different sectors, but also in people-to-people activities. So culture is extremely important. Education is extremely important. Philanthropy is extremely important. We are very clear that the UAE can act as a hub of sorts for strategic philanthropy, both geographically, bringing together philanthropy communities from across north, south, east, west, but also sectorally, making sure that philanthropy isn't seen as something that happens on the side, on the periphery, but actually is brought into the capital continuum to act as a real player, as a form of catalytic capital, helping to de-risk follow-on capital that might come from business and ultimately enabled by government, so that you get a situation where three work together to be greater than the sum of their parts. This is something that the UAE believes in. And with India and India's scale, there's so much that we can do, not just within the UAE and India, but elsewhere, including continents like Africa. So I think, I could sit here and talk about specific sectors and all the amazing things that we want to do together. You know that just as well as I do, but I just want to make a point about the people-to-people connection and making sure that we continue to nurture that. And there are many examples where we're doing that today. We can scale up. We can scale that together.
So specifically focusing on those, because I saw your statement, like your focus area. So these two words that caught my eye. One was, like you just mentioned, philanthropy. The other was, I think, social investment. I think
Social
entrepreneurship. So how exactly would that work? Presently, how does that say? What can an Emirati business what can they do in India, or vice versa? Like, how exactly does this work?
Yeah. So look, philanthropy I often refer to as the forgotten child of the capital system, because in many parts of the world it's regarded as a periphery player, and in some parts of the world it's seen also, it's treated with a high degree of suspicion, right? Why is even philanthropy needed? Does it undermine the role of government? Does the fact that philanthropy exists mean that government isn't doing its job? All these questions come into play. But the reality is, strategic philanthropy is there and has played an incredibly important role at unlocking many solutions, including in innovation, over the years. You'll find that many of the innovation breakthroughs happened with catalytic capital coming in to de-risk the very early stages. And then, of course, once it's de-risked, you get capital crowds in from other sources at scale, including, of course, from the business community and of course, government. But government acting primarily as an enabler.
Right.
Why is this important vis-a-vis India? Because India is solving many of these problems at scale, within education, within healthcare, within financial inclusion. And as the UAE wants to have more impact, not just within our region, but internationally, we need to partner with countries that have that scale, have that know-how, and also obviously have that capabilities. And India has a long history, of course, of and long culture, or a deep culture, I should say, of giving. So I think that's where tie-ups and partnership can make a lot of sense. With respect to social entrepreneurship, something I've been passionate about for over 25 years now, helping to build some of the communities of social entrepreneurs in the UAE through partnerships, including with the likes of Ashoka, not Ashoka University, but Ashoka, which was established by Bill Drayton, who actually coined the term social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
They're a group of basically, it's change makers, but they're young entrepreneurs who are trying to solve real world problems. And now they have tens of thousands of them around the world. So it was Ashoka with Synergos, which was established by Peggy Rockefeller, Endeavor, which is another entrepreneurial network which focuses on high impact entrepreneurs, etc. Acumen by Jacqueline Novogratz, helping to establish hubs for them in our region. And they're all thriving now. But I believe that if we are to solve our challenges, particularly ones that are systemic, it can only be done if we engage our entrepreneurs. Now, that might sound logical, but the question is how. what sort of enabling environments do those entrepreneurs, specifically social entrepreneurs, need to thrive? They are in some of the many, or they are many of the same ingredients that are required for, if you talk about standard entrepreneurship, but there are certain things that they need, including better connective tissue with the philanthropic community and the social sector. Because it's very important those entrepreneurs really understand the problems that they're trying to address and solve. There's this phenomenon which is referred to as, I forget who first wrote this article, heropreneurship, where someone who has a really passionate will to solve a problem and very, capable as individuals, but they go too fast into developing solutions without properly understanding the problem, and they find that in some cases they might be generating some impact, but nowhere near as much as if they understood the problem properly in the first place. In some respects, unintentional negative impact, because they haven't really understood some of the secondary and tertiary realities of the model that they're rolling out. And this is where one needs to be careful. You can only do that by making sure that there's better connective tissue. So the cross-sectoral, so-called whole of society approach is one that we believe in strongly in the UAE. And this is why my job as a special envoy for business and philanthropy to help to connect those two sectors with our diplomatic corps and government is proof in itself that we take that seriously. And this is also what we like to do when we engage with key partner countries, including within India. That's why my job here is to connect with not just the business community, but I'm also connecting with the philanthropic community. Tomorrow, hopefully in Mumbai, we'll be hosting a philanthropy roundtable with, I believe, 8 foundations who are active across India to understand where they see opportunities for collaboration, and also the application of AI. We are in the AI week, the AI summit week, so everything has an AI lens. So an AI in philanthropy is also a very important, factor in how these philanthropies are going to scale. There's a lot that they can do that currently isn't being done because either they're not provided with access to certain technology or tools, or they don't understand it. Which is why 1% of AI investment today globally, less than 1%, has gone into social impact. But that's an opportunity with itself. So again, if we can bring the Marathi philanthropies and foundations together with Indian philanthropies and the AI ecosystem that we've developed and invested heavily in the UAE, combined with the AI ecosystem and deep tech ecosystem within India, I think there's some special things that can happen.
Okay. So when you look at philanthropy, and you mentioned there's a get-together meeting with Indian organizations tomorrow, but any particular, besides AI, is there any rough focus area, like say maybe healthcare or anything, maybe 1 or 2 areas that you're looking at?
Yes, so healthcare, education, and financial inclusion.
Okay, great. So those are
our 3 priorities. But the breadth of the foundation community that we're meeting tomorrow goes really beyond that, including in environmental causes, conservation, quite expansive. And again, we understand, as does the philanthropic community, that these problems, these challenges, these issues are interconnected. Right? You can't, a lot of the time, you can't just solve one on its own without addressing other interconnected challenges, because you'll always find that there's resistance to change, not from within the sector itself, but because of the impact of some other externalities that might be impeding your ability to solve for that problem. So one has to always think about these challenges as being interconnected. And that's why you need a whole of society approach, so that you can tackle them and address them all together. Climate change is a good example of that. You can't just solve for climate without solving for other things, including education, health, etc. So, yeah.
Now, looking at business, and also now that we have an FTA in place, Do you think the UAE can be sort of like a incubating hub for Indians? Because India has this huge startup ecosystem. There are so many entrepreneurs. People want to try different ideas, use tech to scale up and come up with new innovations. Do you think many of them, of course, Bangalore is a big hub for them, and across the country. But do you think the UAE can look at maybe attracting some of them, maybe kind of becoming a hub for attracting these innovators, these startups to maybe set up shop? Even if the core area of operation is in India, but set up the offices in the UAE, you have certain zones where I think companies can come and I think smart city. I'm not sure what. So like that, do you think that is an option? And do you think what exactly is there any scale and scope in that?
Massive. So absolutely. I mean, we would love to see more Indian entrepreneurs seeing the UAE again as an opportunity in and of itself, but also as a hub, as a gateway to other parts of the world, Africa, the rest of the Middle East, and beyond, Europe, of course, as well. And so today you already have a thriving community of Indian entrepreneurs who are building out businesses. We have a lot of examples, including within my own business, where we've invested in Indian businesses and help them expand their operations, their services, their technologies into the UAE and through the UAE into other places. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity is absolutely there. I think what we need to be more mindful of is where the needs of the entrepreneurs are. So to actually really, again, understand what those needs are and solve for them. We can do that, but we just need to have those conversations and to be much more deliberate about those conversations. Which is also why my job is not just to connect with the large established businesses, the conglomerates, if you will, the multi-billion-dollar portfolios, but also the SMEs and the entrepreneurs. I already have a lot of engagement with the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem through, and putting my business hat on, through many of the funds and through many of the entrepreneurial networks that I'm already working through and working with. But as the UAE, we need to understand what those opportunities are and what those challenges are, and to solve for them. The only thing I would say is that the UAE, of course, is a strong federation, and each emirate has its own competitive advantages. So you will see that for some entrepreneurs, they might choose one of the northern emirates as being more suited to their businesses and the opportunities that they want to capture. Or it might be Dubai, or it might be Abu Dhabi, or it might be all of the above, where they feel they need presence and all. What I would encourage Indian entrepreneurs to do is to come and to visit, to contact me before they do, so we can set up many of those meetings. And really, for all your viewers and for all your readers, very important that they understand that we are there, we are here in the UAE, we are in the UAE, we are here to help, to create better awareness around what those opportunities are, and to make the journey of entrepreneurship as seamless and as frictionless as possible. And that includes many things which all entrepreneurs require, including access to capital, ease in terms of regulation and regulatory frameworks, mentorship communities, and partnership opportunities. We want to provide all of the above. We want to work with those entrepreneurs to make sure that those are fit for purpose for their needs. So, message to Indian entrepreneurs is we're open for business, and we're open as a platform to help you scale to other parts of our region, but also beyond into continents like Africa, Europe, and beyond.
So I think that's one interesting point, because Indians, when they start a business or all the startups, they focus on solutions for India because it's a massive market. Sure. But I think right now it's time that Indians started thinking of a global this thing, looking at Africa, for example. So I'll conclude with.
I think we might.
I'll conclude with my last question. You spoke about people-to-people connect. In what way do you think both countries can scale that up beyond, of course, Indians going to the UAE for jobs, or UAE businesses looking at India maybe as a market? Beyond that, on a soft skill, on a people-to-people basis, what can be done by both countries? You think? We'll conclude with that.
So it's already happening, but I think we can go deeper. culture is extremely important. So the more cultural exchanges we have, the better. And those are already happening through many of the established networks that we have put in place. But there are many more that we can unlock, including with, now going back to philanthropy, including with many of the foundations that are working across culture, helping to provide more access to and platforms to young artists, for example, to express themselves through music, through arts, through theater. We need to start connecting those dots, or connecting philanthropies that are working across those spheres to see where we can look at collaborative, cultural content. Education is another big piece. We now have examples of campuses, Indian campuses opening up
Yes,
in the UAE. Similarly, we'd like to see more of our students coming to study in India. So a cross-fertilization of academic content, if you will, is very important. And that leads me to final point I'll make, research. I think research is, and looking at joint research is extremely important. Research portfolios on their own, as in the UAE on its own, is growing significantly because we've realized that we are behind in that. But we're taking it very seriously, and it's happening across institutions of higher education and more dedicated research centers now that are being established. But as you know, research really takes off when we're able to connect dots. So linking innovation research across everything from life sciences to health, to education, to manufacturing, advanced industries, etc., and linking the research projects that we have, as well as, of course, the inputs, right, in terms of what data sets you're using between India and the UAE will help to unlock so much more and create, I think, to go back to your question, create much stronger people-to-people bonds. Because what we become then, instead of just consumers of imported innovation, we become joint creators and producers of innovation for the world. And that will be, I think, incredibly important connective tissue between our two nations and between societies, between India and the UAE as we move forward in this next phase of joint growth.